Go back to another Revit video. In this video, we're going to look at different filters, specifically looking at acoustics, fire ratings, load-bearing walls. This is going to serve as more of kind of a working view sort of a filter where you probably want to go back to these views and monitor certain walls, doors, whatever conditions you have that might be fire rated or acoustically rated or something like that. And we can do this really easily in Revit. Now, in the past, I've done this through Dynamo scripts, which is totally great, but it's not necessary. And then, you want to keep this in working views. It's very simple to go back to, very easy to refer to. So before we get into it, if at any point in this video you happen to learn something, which I hope you do, please demolish that like button. It really helps me out a lot. Okay, getting into it now. We are in just a basic floor plan, nothing special going on here. There really is not much to worry about. There's a few meeting spaces, bathrooms, whatever. Again, that doesn't even really matter. What we care about is ultimately some of the ratings of walls that we've set up and some of the acoustic values that we've set up. And then finally, whether some of these walls are load bearing or not. So that's totally fine. The first thing I want to do though, is come into working. And I have this set up into obviously working and documentation. I want to keep those things separate. And so this is just a basic working view. So first thing I want to do is duplicate this view. And with detailing is fine if you have any. I don't have any, so I just want to duplicate this. It's going to show up here, and I want to rename this. And because I want this to show up at the top, I'm going to actually put an underscore there at the beginning, and there we go. So fire rating, and I'm going to duplicate this again, and then rename this to underscore acoustics. Great, and then duplicate this one more time and rename this to load bearing, underscore load bearing. Cool. So now we have these three different views, and we want to start applying filters to each of them. Each view will have a different filter to decide, hey, is this load bearing, fire rating, acoustic? What are we looking for in this particular view? And so let's start with fire rating because we're probably going to be most familiar with this. We're going to use this the most. And so where do we find this? Well, if we have a template, which I don't, we would obviously find it here, and then under the template itself, it would be filters. Now, I don't want to work with templates because we don't need to, but just know that if you have a template, you can put it in a template. But because these are working views, and because they're very specific views to what we're trying to do in this video, I don't care about a template. And so if you want to, great. If not, not a huge deal. So visibility graphics, VG is going to get us here, and then filters. So the only thing I have here is interior floors, and I don't want to see them. Let's see if I even have any that are there by default. I don't, so I'm just going to remove that. That's very simple. And so the first thing we need to do is end up making a new filter. So let's edit. So I have a bunch here that they're fine. I have to kind of baked into the template, but I don't care about that. I'm going to make a new filter. And again, because I want this to look the same or filter the same or something, I want to call this fire rating. Very easy. Okay, and so the first thing with filters, obviously, if you don't know how to use filters and you don't know what they are or anything like that, I have a great filters video. Please go check that out. It's going to tell you essentially everything that you need to know and need to worry about filters because it does really help. And it's going to get you to the point where we are now in this video where we're just applying it and then moving on. Okay, so the next thing is categories. What do we want this filter to look for? Well, we want it to look for walls and doors at least. So let's go walls and then doors. And again, we can always come back and add things later. That's not a huge deal. So make sure you obviously check what you know that you want to include. But beyond that, do we care? Not really. Okay, cool. So then let's move over here. And then obviously this is fine. We can keep it here. And so basically, what are we looking for? There's a ton of different things here. You'll notice that conveniently fire rating is right here. And that's exactly what we want. And just to know that this is a parameter, it's a type parameter in this case, and we want to make sure that we select this. And the reason it shows up is because it's an out-of-the-box parameter in most types, element types. So it's going to be there by default, specifically for walls and doors. It's going to be there. You're going to want to use it, and this is exactly what we need. So here we go. Let's look at our different options here. Well, I have no options because I haven't applied them yet. Let's see equals. Then we can start to look at our options. these are basically a report of all the different values that I have for walls that have specifically the fire rating in walls and doors. So these are all those values that I have in my entire project. And this is based on not necessarily the walls I have placed there, but the walls that are in my template that I have in my project at all. So this is great. And so what does this tell me? Well, I have the hour rating for walls, and then I have minutes, and that's going to be for doors. So again, you can see it's reporting everything. And so is that what I want? Well, first of all, not necessarily. The first thing I want to see is, is it greater than 1? And so or greater than 0. So this is not technically a 0 because I have dashes there. And if you have a 0, great, whatever. But I could say is greater than any of these. Okay, that would work. If I put is greater than this dash 0 dash, I would get all of these values, which is kind of what I want. I can also do is greater than 0. Which I can just simply type in myself. But for the sake of this, whether you use a 0 or a dash 0 dash whatever, as long as you're getting all the values that you want, basically I want all of these values to be reported or selected, however you want to call that, in the filter. So I want all of these values to show up and populate. So I can say is greater than that. I'm done. That's easy enough. And so that means every value below that, in this case, will be something that I can manipulate in some way, which we'll get to, obviously. Great. So, okay, obviously we can come back here, and of course I need to add one. I've only created it, now I need to physically add it. And so again, the next thing we need to look at is, by default, this filter will be enabled, which, let's be honest, that's, I guess, good because I physically added it myself. And then it's by default visible. And so at this point, you know that everything that we have, every element that is a part of this fire rating, in other words, all the doors and all of the walls that have a fire rating greater than 0 or greater than dash 0 dash, will be, quote, selected by this filter. And so if I uncheck this visibility, they're going to go away. Now, I don't want that for this particular one. There might be some other filters that I make where I want these elements to go away, but not for this one. I want to make sure they're still visible. But what I really want to do is start to override them. So something we can do is physically override them by default. Let's say I know that one of these walls has a rating. Well, I can go up here to the paintbrush and override by element, and I have the same options here that I would have anywhere else. Do I want to do that? No, I specifically don't, because the filter would not work. And once we go back into the filters and start applying this, you'll see why we really want to use filters as opposed to just basic element overrides. So you'll notice here we have the same override options, which is perfect. We're familiar with these. It's very simple. So what do we want to do? Well, cut lines, we want to start making everything red. So I don't care what the line is, I just want to make it red. Great. The pattern, probably want to make that red too. So if I have a pattern applied, then it's going to be red. I'm not going to override any pattern that's there, but it's going to be red. And then same with maybe projection lines and patterns. We can always come back here and edit these. I want to make all these things red. So basically everything that I see is going to start turning red. That has the fire ratings. Cool. I can also choose to halftone them. Don't care about that. That's not a big deal. So I can press OK. And look, ooh, this is telling me something already. So my guess, and basically to check ourselves whether the filter is correct, I can click on one of these walls and see, all right, well, it says it's 1 hour rated, but that doesn't mean anything yet. What really matters is the parameter value, specifically the fire rating here. And cool, look, it's 1 hour. Cool, that's what I want. That means it's working. That's exciting. All right, and then finally this one. I know this one. This one's supposed to be a 2 hour. And then look, a 2 hour rating. Fantastic. That's really encouraging to see. And that's good. That's what I want. So it's working. And then finally, this door, we're going to check this as well. Come down here. Look, fire rating is 45 minutes. Awesome. So this filter is working. So great. We're at this point. We have all the fire ratings we see and whatever. So maybe we're at the point where, it's not quite right. Obviously, I see this door is not red. Why is it not red? Well, my guess is because it's just a standard door. I probably need to change that to a 20-minute door because this is in a 1 hour raw. Obviously, do your own code research, but boom, look, as soon as I change that, it shows up red. So clearly, you can see the appeal of wanting to use filters specific to something like this this is fire rated. So obviously, I have a few issues here because this little portion of wall, if we're worried about this room being rated, it does not matter. This is basically a waste of money to add the extra layers of gyp or type X gyp or insulation, whatever it might be. That's not necessary. So this is an example of me being lazy. And a lot of times what these filters will do is point out specific instances like this, like that. All of these little things. I don't need this to be 2-hour rated. What a joke. Because it's not very big. It's probably 3-4 feet long, but that's going to add up. If you do that everywhere, you can clearly see I have a number of places over here that don't need to be rated. Obviously, this door would need to be rated. So another example of easy to change this. So I don't have a door type specifically that's 45 minutes. So we duplicate this. We call this 45 minutes. We're done there. That does nothing yet because we have to actually apply that to our fire rating. In the identity data here, we can see that there's fire rating. That's a dash. We're going to call that 45 minutes. Press OK. And as soon as we do that, boom, it turns red. Cool. So that's great. I can come back here and we're going to encounter this problem with other filters. But let's come back into our filter one more time. And we can see, it is doing everything that I want. Obviously, if I turn the visibility off, like we said, all of those elements will go away. We clearly do not want that for this in particular, which is great. So I love it. That's awesome. Okay, so we've looked at fire ratings. We're going to now go look at acoustics and then finally load bearing. So it's going to be the same concept. So coming into acoustics, you can see I have nothing. There's no filter applied, which is totally what I want. But first, I want to inspect one of these walls. So we're going to inspect one of the walls, the type specifically, and we can see that this is just out of my template. I can see that I have an SCC number, and that SCC is a dash, or it's different values here. In this case, maybe we apply an SCC of 50. That's great. 45, 50. That'll work. And so we have this entire wall because it has sound bat. It makes sense to do this. It now has a value of 50. Great. And so that's done wherever that wall type is, and we'll find out where that is later. Okay, so then visibility graphics, I need to go into filters, make one more filter. That's going to be called acoustics. And again, we want to make sure that we select doors and walls. Walls are probably the primary thing that we're really worried about. And so maybe in this case, I probably don't want to select doors. You would have an SCC rating of doors, specifically for like a hotel or residential units, things like that. You'll find that. But for the sake of this, it's all going to work the same. So we can see specifically walls here because we specifically check walls. And we can see, hey, look, there's so much here. And so basically the name of the filter or the name of the parameter is this STC number, the wall STC number. Cool. And so what does that equal? Well, I don't really care if it equals something specific, but I want it to be greater than, we can see our selections here. I have a dash and I have 50. Whether it's a 0 or a dash, whatever, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to choose this is greater than the dash, which means maybe it's 0. So that's the thing to be aware about. If I come back into another wall and I put 0, my guess is that 0, because it's a number, is greater than the dash. So it might be safer for us to simply put is greater than 0. Okay, which means that I don't have to worry about the dash at all either. So I'll press OK, and again, nothing will happen because I haven't changed any colors, applied overrides, or anything. It just exists there. I also need to physically add the acoustics filter there. It is visible, great. And then finally, for this one, let's make this one blue or something. Blue. We're going to apply the exact same overrides, just in a different color, so we can stay on the same page and understand what we're looking at by default. Blue, blue, and blue. Look at that. Okay, so all of these are now blue. We press OK. And look, cool. These are all of the walls that have an SCC rating above 0. That makes sense, around a bathroom, around a conference room. And so we can clearly see, well, this doesn't make sense. Obviously, we're talking about being lazy. But if this is, do these two need to? Depends on the room type and things like that. We can get into the doors if we really need to, but for this, I don't. But for an example like this, you can see that I wouldn't need this. That's way too much. Obviously, this is enough. I would want to carry this on. And so I can simply even match the properties of this wall to that one. we can see here that this one is actually a rated wall, which means it's very likely going to have an acoustics rating as well. And you can see it doesn't now, but I probably want to have that 50 there too. And so all of those will then show up blue. That's fantastic. Obviously, this is going to tell you where you have interruptions, an STC rating or fire rating, whatever it might be. And then we can see, yeah, do the doors need to? Clearly in the sake, we're looking at fire ratings. They definitely do, because if you have a continuous wall, like a wall that continues interrupted by a door, well, if that wall is fire rated, that door is obviously going to have to as well. Otherwise, the wall being fire rated doesn't mean anything. So that is another example here. We can see, yeah, I might have gotten lazy with some instances, look, completely missed that wall. So for example, I can even match the properties of this wall to that one. It turns blue, and I know that is acoustically rated the way I need it to be, which is awesome. Obviously, if you have your wall type set up correctly and appropriately, the fact that you've changed the wall type is going to tie back to the different partition types you have set up in your project. So you won't need to worry about anything beyond that. You just know, hey, I've modeled it correctly and it's referencing the right wall type at this point. Cool. And then finally, let's go to load bearing, because now, yeah, we need to look at the load bearing walls. So again, visibility graphics, filters, add, and then the cool thing about this is edit new, actually, add load bearing. I only care about walls here. We're not going to have any load bearing doors. Please leave me a comment below if you've heard of a load bearing door. Obviously, if it is the entire wall, maybe it's load bearing. That would be hilarious. Funny nonetheless. So walls. And then what do we care about? Well, that's going to be something called, I believe it's structural. Yeah. Structural. Structural usage, structural material, all this. We don't care. I don't care about the material as much as I care about the usage. What is it used as? And then to see the options we have, we could see equals, and then, yeah, is it bearing? Is it whatever? I'm going to choose bearing, and I'm going to show you why in just a second. So I'll press OK. Cool. Okay, here. So if I just select any wall, that's probably load bearing. Well, it's going to be these exterior walls for sure. And we can see it's an instance parameter for one, but two, I can see here's structural. So basically, is this structural or not? We can see the structural usage right now is non-bearing, and because it's unchecked, it's grayed out as non-bearing. I can't change it. But the second I check this, I can see, ooh, look at all these options, most of which, as an architect, I don't care about. But if I want to track load-bearing walls, this is going to be primarily for like a multifamily or hospitality project where I have different units and demising walls, whatever. I can see that I have structural. Boom. In the second it is checked as structural, the structural usage becomes bearing. Now, I can change this to bearing or shear or structural combine, whatever. But by default, this is the big thing. By default, it will be bearing. And because of that, I can come back into my filter, look at it again, edit this one, load bearing there, and I can see, ooh, look at that, bearing. So all I need to do is check the box of structural. It becomes bearing, as in a bearing wall, bearing structure, and that's it. I'm good. So I'm excited about that. I can see just walls, great. I need to remove this one because I don't care about it, and then add my load bearing. Awesome. And then because I want to be a bit different, I want to make this one green. Cool. We'll call this one, that's a nice green right there. Okay. Green again, nice green. Finally, the same green right here. So I'm covering all my bases with all my different greens and whatnot. Okay, great. So press OK, and look at this. So just remember, this specific structural parameter is an instance parameter. Whether you like that or not, cool, not a huge deal. What I've done in the past is I've gone to literally make a new project parameter called load bearing as opposed to structural, so you don't confuse it. And you can make that a type parameter, and you can have it be just a simple checkbox in the type if you want it to. You can just have it be a simple yes, no, or type parameter, yes, whatever it is, as an actual type parameter. So you can do it more globally than this, but this is totally fine for what we're doing, which means I'm just going to select all my exterior walls because they're obviously load bearing as a start, and then choose structural. Boom. They all turn green. That's great. So then it's a matter of, probably some of these corridor walls, I am very far from a structural engineer, but, we can start to make sense of which walls might begin to be load bearing, things like this, and obviously this is an example. We might have some down the corridor that are, All this means that they're probably wider, maybe they're made of a different material, but at the end of the day, they're scheduled differently in your partition types. So then you can work with them differently. And the second you do this, you know that once you've tied them back to a different type or a different, you've accounted for the fact that they're load bearing, then it's really easy to say, hey, I just check the box, make sure they are showing up as load bearing, and then I can move on. Check structural, boom. All of these show up green. Fantastic. So probably this one as well. And again, that's awesome. So again, I'm going to show you this because this one's green. I will choose something other than bearing. Well, this is a shear wall, for instance. Well, filter's not looking for that. So just be aware of those kinds of things. So that's really cool. Yeah, this is a great way of always coming back here. And the cool thing about this is I have these 3 views set up now. Yeah, I have these 3 views set up and I have these filters set up. So I can come back a month later and see what kind of work I've done, what kind of work other people have done, whether it's putting in new walls, whatever, easily check their work, my work, and see if all the walls are correctly rated, acoustically rated, bearing, whatever they need to be to really easily move on to the next phase of the project. Really easy to manage at this point. And it's, we all like colors, we all like visual. You can probably figure out, you can easily do this in like a schedule form if you want to do that, but that doesn't tie back to visuals and physically where things need to be rated based on other objects. So totally a lot of code things that we're not covering. So definitely check that out and make sure you're up to code when you're applying these changes. But nonetheless, it's something really easy to track. And so finally what I want to do is, because I was lazy, for example, what I would do in a case like this is, if I have this wall, I'm just going to slice this wall. I'm going to slice it beyond the trim. So I'm going to end up trimming these together. I will trim that there, or I'll cut that there, and then trim those 2 walls. And then I can simply match properties of this wall to that one, and then move it on back. Really easy to do. And that means I have the wall rating exactly where I need to be. I don't need to extend that rating into other walls. And it's really easy to see that because it's red. Hello, it's right there in your face. Probably do the exact same thing here. A slice beyond the trim this here, slice that. Yes, change this to the adjacent wall type. Generally, not always, but change it to another type that probably isn't rated, and then you're done. Move on. Look at that. It's really clean looking. And my guess is it's going to apply similar things to the acoustics. Obviously, if I need this acoustic rated, it's totally fine. It works the same, just like that. You can see that whatever's in this room is now acoustic rated, and we're good to go. Very good. So that will do it for this video. We looked at the different fire ratings, acoustics, load bearing, not specifically those, but how to set up filters where we can track all these things in real time. And it's great because you can come back later and see all the work you or someone else has done and see if it's right. Just continuously come back and look at it. And it's really easy to manage, especially because it's got some pretty colors. So if you happen to learn something, please demolish that like button. It really helps me out a lot. Also consider subscribing. That does as well. Leave any other questions in the comment section below. I'll be sure to answer all of them. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching.